Qualifying race 2 for the GT Cup is about to get underway here at Paul Ricard as part of the 2022 FIA Motorsport Games. A word of explanation, first of all. What is a qualifying race? Well, you take the points scored across the 2 qualifying races, and that gives you the grid for the main race, and it's the main race that will give us the medals. 2 drivers per car, 2 drivers per nation, therefore, in GT Cup for the FIA Motorsport Games. Mandatory pit stop between 25 and 35 minutes. The pit stop must be 69 seconds, line to line. David Addison, John Watson trackside in the sunshine here in the south of France. And although the grid isn't a huge one for this race, yesterday's event that took us into the darkness was certainly lively. And I think today, with different drivers starting the cars, Watty's going to be just as good.
It'll be different, that is for sure. But just to follow up a little bit on what Darren Turner was mentioning about the different temperatures. When we had the race last night, it started at 6 p.m. Track temperature was 36 Celsius. Today, now, coming up to 11 in the morning, it's only 21. Ambient was only 5 degrees warmer, but the track temperature is going to be the key. And how you get your tire temperature up, tire pressures are a function of tire temperature. So you've got to work really hard. And the cars are sitting in the grid. They've been there for 15 or so minutes. There's no temperature at all, and the opening lap will be a lap where caution, and I have to use that word cautiously, is going to be the name of the game.
Well, the grid is formed, and you saw a moment ago Fabian Schiller, who will start second on the grid. Eric Debar and Simon Gachet's French entry is on pole position. Gemma Scott is down on the grid. France is on pole, and one of the drivers of that car is Eric Debar.
Well, I'm down here, of course, on the front row of the grid with French driver Eric Debar, who's racing with Acadis, who had a fantastic season this year in GT3 with the GT World Challenge Europe. Eric, it's a pleasure to see you. On va parler en français parce que c'est plus facile pour vous. Then we'll be speaking in French, but pour vous là, pour représenter la France, quel honneur.
C'est déjà un honneur de la représenter, d'avoir été sélectionné par la fédération. Ensuite, j'arrive en fin de carrière et de participer à ces premiers Jeux et en plus en France, c'est une vraie satisfaction.
Well, of course, it's an honour to be selected by the federation, you said there, and to be here at this part of your career and representing France is just wonderful. Hier, c'était un super battre sur le circuit avec Allemagne et avec Angleterre aussi. C'était le deuxième partie de la course qu'on a vu tous les battre.
Ben oui, ça a été très intéressant avec les Anglais. Ça a été un peu chaud, mais bon, il fallait garder la voiture sur la piste parce que c'est une finale sèche, donc il fallait impérativement finir à cette deuxième place pour espérer une belle position aujourd'hui.
Well, it was all, of course, about having the best position for today and staying well onto the track, even though the positions and the battles were tough as well. Eric, aujourd'hui, la première ligne de départ, tout est là.
Et oui, et bon, écoutez, c'est encore une course qualificative, donc l'important est de bien se qualifier pour ce soir.
Again, it's another qualification race, so it's important to be careful and to be in a good position for the race for later on today. Eric, merci beaucoup. Bon courage.
Merci.
Eric Debar will do a second stint because although he started yesterday, Simon Gachet will do the first stint, and it's Simon Gachet that therefore is on pole position. The results of yesterday's race don't affect this grid. That was a standalone qualifying session, and this grid set by the times of a separate driver in Q2. The only difference to this grid is that Brazil, the car started by, for this race, Bruno Baptista, got a 3-place grid drop for overtaking under a red flag in qualifying. But that's the only shuffle based on the qualifying times. Evan Chen, very rapid yesterday. He will start the Chinese Taipei Ferrari. Thumbs up from the very rapid Evan Chen. We've seen him in the Motorsport Games. We've seen him also in Lamborghini Super Trofeo, for example. And the spectacularly coloured Chinese Taipei entry, John, starts a little further back on the grid.
Yes, I mean, that's also a consequence of the Q2 qualifying, but, well, we've got lovely, lovely conditions here right now. I did mention the track temperature. That's going to be the key to the opening laps. So there's a car that also, Carol Bash was one of my heroes, got tagged early in his stint and drove through the field and had fastest lap upon fastest lap. Only towards the end did that lap get taken away by, I think, Simon Gachet in the end had the fastest race lap. But Carol Bash made a wonderful drive back through the field. And that car was a bit more like it was punchboard and countersunk, but the number of times he got tagged by cars amongst the field.
Well, certainly Karol Bash was mighty impressive yesterday. He will start third on the grid. And what we ought to do next is hear from the Ukrainian entry, because Yevgen Solokovsky will drive the Aston Martin, and he is with Gemma.
Yevgen, it's wonderful to see the Ukraine representation here, obviously in the circumstances for your country, to see the representation in such numbers as well. At the opening ceremony, you had the standing ovation. What does it mean for you to be here?
Yeah, thank you very much, because it's this difficult time. It is not easy started here, but for us, for Ukraine team, it is very important stay here and starting in this event in FIA Motorsport Games.
And you're on the third row of the grid. You're standing a very good chance in this competition.
Yeah, for me, I'm first time here in Paul Ricard and first time with GT3 cars. Ivan have more experience, is good GT3 driver. And from yesterday, I am happy with my performance. I have yesterday good start in P4. For chicane, I have spinning with car because tires is too cold. And yeah, we're looking. Today is, I think we have lucky. And
good luck to you. Have a great one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
So Yevgen Sokolovsky will go second, and as Gemma has been making the point, lots of support for Ukraine. Understandably, it is excellent to see the car here. Yesterday, Sokolovsky had a spin early on, but the car fought back really well. And by flag fall, Ivan Peklin had brought Ukraine up to 9th in yesterday's race. The result yesterday slightly shuffled also because the Stephen and Brenton Grove Australia Porsche was given a 10-second penalty for contact in an incident. Switzerland represented by Dexter Müller and Yannick Mettler. For the Mercedes squad, it's going to be Yannick Mettler who will go first in the SPS Automotive Performance operated Mercedes. Yannick Mettler driving in the Sprint Cup as well, which we'll come to tomorrow. So the grid now starting to clear, because we're getting towards that 1 minute board. Rolling start, and then it's going to be really interesting in this first stint, isn't it, to see what Gachet can do about Fabian Schiller, because yesterday the gap was a large one when they got into the second stint, and therefore we'll see what is going to happen today. And factor in as well Sam Neary. He's with Gemma.
I'm just down here with Sam Neary, who stepped in at the very last minute here with Sky Tempesta for the UK. Sam, enjoying getting to know the car and the circuit.
Yeah, exactly. It's my first time in an Evo Merc, first time around Paul Ricard, first time with Ram, and I missed pretty much every bit of running in a FB1 and FB2. So I think I did more laps in the race than I did in any practice. So hopefully I can climb up this order a bit and see where we end up, try and get a few points for the main race later.
Thank you very much. Have a great race.
Thank you.
Yeah, Sam Neary races Mercedes in British GT with his father Richard Neary. They so nearly won at Brands Hatch, had late race dramas with fuel and therefore didn't finish. So he knows the Mercedes, not the Evo necessarily. Certainly doesn't know the circuit, but he learnt well yesterday, so he's one to watch here, starting for this race based on his own qualifying efforts. 7th on the grid. Their 8th on the grid is Victor Gomez, or Victor Manuel Gomez Donato, the 4th, to give him his full title for Puerto Rico.
Yeah, we'll just call him Victor, I think. Anyway, but Sam Neary did a very good job in his stint, because basically it's so little running prior to that first qualifying race. And as the race progressed, he progressed. We could see just simply he was getting to understand the rhythm of the Paul Ricard Grand Prix circuit, and literally by the lap he was picking up time all around the circuit. So he will go into this morning's race, I think, with a level of confidence that he didn't have when he jumped in on Friday evening.
That's Bruno Baptista for Brazil. This car penalised with its grid drop, so another of the regular Mercedes teams, Acudis ASP, running that car, and it will have work to do. But over the course of an hour, it is going to be a race, I suspect, where the bulk of the work, in terms of opening up a gap, is done by the pro. But it's the AMs in the second stint keeping out of trouble, not making mistakes, that are going to be key to all of this. And just to explain briefly how the grid works for the main race, and it's the main race that gives you the medals, you get a point for the position you finish in. So a win gives you 1 point, 5th gives you 5, and so on and so forth. Add them together, lowest total on pole position, highest total at the back of the grid, but it's the final race today which the medals will be awarded from.
Well, the field is waiting now to go off on its parade lap. Tyres probably stone cold. The other big factor will, of course, be the driver change between 25 and 35 minutes, no tire changes. And there we saw yesterday, some teams were marginally quicker by a margin of maybe 2 or 3 seconds over others. And again, between the France entry and the German entry, Germany was very good. France were slightly slower. And the great United Kingdom entry, likewise, did a pretty good job.
I think Sam Neary is going to be a real gun in this first stint, because with the confidence of knowing the circuit greater today than yesterday, and the fact that he's racing in daylight, not going into darkness like yesterday, he will be one to watch.
He will, but he will be starting on the 4th row of the grid, so he's got, what, another 7 cars ahead of him to find a way through. And of course, the opening lap will be a lap where any little penalty will be magnified. We saw that with the Ukraine Aston Martin on the opening lap there. We can see the car, the blue and yellow with the green markings around the air intake. It got tagged on the opening lap going into the chicane and the Mistral straight, and that set it on the back foot. But they came back strongly and they ended up finishing in 9th place. And I think starting here on the 3rd row, they've got an opportunity, particularly with Ivan Petkin behind the wheel, to be at the races.
Let's just run through that grid. It is France, Simon Gachet on pole position. From Germany's Fabian Schiller. The 2nd row, Poland's Karol Bash, Chinese Taipei's Evan Chen. The 3rd row, Switzerland's Yannick Mettler alongside Ukrainian Ivan Peklin. For the UK, Sam Neary lines up alongside Puerto Rico's Victor Gomez on the 4th row. Row 5 for Hong Kong, China. Great to have them here given the travel dramas. Marchi Lee, Brazil's Bruno Baptista. 10th on the grid. 11th is Brenton Grove for Australia. Jonas Gelzinis for Lithuania is starting 12th, and 13th it is Gonzalo de Andre, who didn't have the pace yesterday, but Fernando Navarrete for Spain did have the pace. And I think the Spanish entry, if it doesn't drop a lap in the first stint, will be one to watch as the race progresses.
Yes, he also, as a driver, he got a penalty, a 5-second penalty, I think, at this part of the racetrack in the chicane, when he went wide and he gained a position. He didn't give that position back. He got a 5-second penalty. But I reckon, actually, because he got into clear air and he could pull away, the penalty ended up being more to his own advantage rather than being a disadvantage, because I think he finished more than 5 seconds ahead of the car that he should have given the position back to, and on it went. So there may be a little bit of gamesmanship being played out, because if a 5-second penalty is the only penalty you're going to get, if you don't give a position back, you might think, well, if I've got clear air, that's got to be something I can make use of.
Now, this is Sam Neary's view. We know from British GT that Sam can get out his elbows. I have no hesitation in suggesting he will not be 7th by the end of the opening lap. The leading car, the pace car as it is, will head for the pit lane this time, of course. The race director, Rui Marquez, will, if he's happy, give the indication that we can go racing. Bruno Baptista's view here. He has got a really crowded house ahead of him. Just to make the point about Sam Neary, he was parachuted in at the 11th hour, as he was suggesting in the interview with Gemma Scott. The UK team captain, Chris Froggatt, taken poorly in the couple of days before the event, and Sam Neary was able to get himself here and, of course, knows the car. Ian Loggett, the other driver, this year's British GT champion. So, on paper, that should be a really good combination, and we look forward to seeing what will happen in the medal-deciding main race later on in the day. But GT Cup qualifying, race 2, is about to get underway. The cars now make their way down towards the Virage Dupont. Simon Gachet for France on pole position. Germany alongside. Poland, Chinese Taipei, Switzerland, Ukraine, rounding out the top 6 on the grid. 60 minutes of racing. Lights will change. We go racing now. It is blast off, and France gets the drop on everybody, but only just. But have a look at Poland, virtually pushing the Mercedes of France along. Karol Bash desperately looking for a clear bit of room where he might be able to make a move. He goes through on the inside into 2nd place. The Audi absolutely on the tail of the French Mercedes as they dive into turn 1. France, Poland, Germany, Switzerland 4th, and here comes Germany back up the inside of Poland as there Fabian Schiller sorts out Karol Bash, or does he?
I think it's going to be very close going into the chicane as we go on board with the Brazil entry down into the chicane. Sam Neary gets tagged on the left-hand side, has to run off racetrack, but force measure. Now on the outside, round turn 5, and round goes Brazil. Body work on the track as well. Yeah, a bit of help. I think that was Lithuania that went past. Jonas Gelzinis for Lithuania may well have been involved in all of that. So the officials will have a look, no doubt, at their feed of all the incidents. But up front, it is France. Simon Gachet leading the way. That's Marchi Lee in the Honda being monstered, or is he monstering? Almost 3 wide up towards the chicane. And the Porsche's got a problem, hasn't it? It's got a right rear puncture. It ran wide on turn 7, coming onto the straight. I don't know whether that was the cause or effect, but that looks like a right rear has been tagged, and that is problem for Australia. They'll have to limp back into the pits, get that tyre changed, and in effect, even though it's a 1 hour race, there's very little chance of being able to claw back lost time, plus the additional having to make a mandatory pit stop between 25 and 35 minutes.
So that car limps on. It is Brenton Grove Jr. at the wheel of the car that's run by FIA Motorsport, the Australia Porsche. There in the Ferrari is Victor Gomez, but it's France ahead of Germany, ahead of Poland, ahead of Chinese Taipei, ahead of then Ukraine. No, tell you a lie. Switzerland has got ahead of Chinese Taipei, then Ukraine. And Sam Neary, having been forced off the road, hasn't made the progress really that we were anticipating for the UK.
And is now behind the Ukrainian Aston Martin, a car which I think has got good, genuine pace. And it might be a handful for Sam Neary to find a way around that car, because they're both essentially, there is the Australia Porsche limping back with that right rear car. They got cut down. I don't know whether that was on turn 7 or not, but or was there contact? I think there may be been a bit of contact in that group of cars that he was running in, coming down into the chicane.
Saw lots of fans in the grandstands. Free admission to the FIA Motorsport Games. You register online for a ticket, and people have been arriving in their thousands this morning as the leaders go by. And with 1 lap in the book, 9/10 of a second between France and Germany. Great little battle pack going on here. Spain, Lithuania, the recovering Brazilian car. That therefore is Gonzalo de Andres ahead of Jonas Gelzinis, ahead of Bruno Baptista. This Brazil's view. Baptista is having a go back at the car that turned him around, and he dives up the inside into turn 3.
So good, clean pass down into the chicane, gets the job done. And now we'll look forward to the Spanish Mercedes as it goes through turn 5. And then sweeps through the long turn 6, which then leads on to the beginning of the Mistral Straight. So Baptista making up for what was a spin 1 lap ago. He's got the momentum coming off turn 7, but the straight down to the entry into the chicane may not be long enough. Defence from Spain going to the middle of the racetrack to force the Brazil entry to take the long way around.
Australia's Porsche into the pits. Bruno Baptista for Brazil at 1 place. Goes through on the inside into the top 10 now. So this has been a good recovery lap for him after that spin. We know, though, that Baptista has always had good speed, good pace. So Brazil working forward. And as he comes back onto the Mistral Straight, so Baptista, as I say, Brazil into the top 10. Let's try and piece it all together, John, from the start with the Brazilian view here.
Yeah, this is on the run down into the chicane, a bit congested there. Sam Neary on the left of the screen, you see there's a slight contact, so he has to take the inside of the curbing. Didn't really make up any ground then. The Ferrari is sort of stacked up behind the Brazil entry, tags the car, and around it goes.
And this, another view as the cars dive down. This was the tag, and around went the Brazilian Mercedes. That was from Lithuania's perspective. Now the Australia Porsche still in the pits, and therefore he's about to drop a lap as the leader goes by. France 9/10 of a second up the road, but Fabian Schiller has actually just done a quicker lap time. Karol Basch 3rd, there he is for Poland, and then Yannick Mettler in the Swiss entry 4th, Chinese Taipei 5th, Ukraine 6th. There, look, is Ivan Peklin in the Aston Martin, the car run by the German Pro Sport GmbH team. But for Ukraine, Ivan Peklin going nicely here.
Went very well last evening and doing equally well as here this morning. In 3rd place, looking now at the Polish Audi entry. There is the Porsche in the garage. Looks like it's all over. Yeah. Sadly for the Australian Porsche entry, maybe more damage than we saw with that rear tyre being cut down. Always a problem when a bit of rubber's flailing around under the rear guard. So we've got piping and cooling coming from the front of the car to the back of the car. Maybe something there has been additional damage.
Well, hopefully they can get the car back out by way of a test for the main race, on which the medals will be awarded later on in the day. The top 3 covered by 1.8 seconds at the start of this 3rd lap. France, Germany, Poland. It is Mercedes, Mercedes, Audi. And you could argue this is very much a Mercedes circuit with all of the grunt that those cars have. It's Mercedes 4, it's Ferrari 5, it's Aston Martin 6, and Sam Neary still 7th for the UK, which again surprises me. I really did think that he would have been fighting his way up the order.
Well, he got shuffled a little bit in the opening stage into the chicane. But again, he's behind that Ukrainian Aston Martin, which is a car which was quick last night in the hands of Peklin. So where's he going to find a way around? They've got very similar performances. Oh, watch that coming out of scene. That was always a little bit of interest to see whether Gonzalez Martin de André in the 19 Spain entry and being pursued by the Audi in 12th position.
Yeah, Jonas Gelzinis for Lithuania, somebody that was rapid a good few seasons ago in Porsche racing in the UK. He's also been a regular in the 24-hour series of late, so an experienced GT driver. The team manager of number 25, Hong Kong China, is being sent to the race director. So something has happened for Marchi Lee. There was an incident between Hong Kong, China and Brazil. So I was suggesting it was Lithuania, but it looks like Hong Kong, China was judged to have been the guilty party. And so to answer for the sins, the team manager of Hong Kong, China has to go to the race director straight away.
Well, there is our race leader. The gap still, well, there's 1.2 seconds when they came across the line. Looked marginally less than that down at the far end of the racetrack now. Karel Basch more or less in clear air. He's got nobody directly behind him, and he's just hanging on more or less, but he is actually 1.5 seconds behind the second place German entry Mercedes, and now 2.7 seconds behind the race leader, who entering into the chicane. So the first 3 cars covered by 2.7 seconds.
Karel Basch then turns his way through, running in 3rd place for Poland right now, and his last lap was a 2 minutes 3.886. If anything, that lead gap is coming down, isn't it? Because Fabian Schiller now knows that his co-driver is quicker than Simon Gachet, so as long as he can stay on the tail, doesn't even need to get through. But in the second stint, his co-driver can perhaps play more of a part than can Team France's Eric Devard.
Yes, I think that will be part of the strategy. Of course, the whole strategy will be contingent on at the point at which they bring their respective cars in, and I suspect because these are the more experienced or maybe semi-pro or pro drivers, that they will stay out to the maximum driving time, which is up to, in this case, should be doing 33 minutes. I think that would be the maximum you could risk running, and then they'll hand over to their second driver. But between Germany, with Valentin Pierberg taking over, and Eric Debar, I think sort of the balance would go more towards Pierberg in terms of ability and speed.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. Certainly Pierberg yesterday was able to build quite a good gap. Now, I'll grant you that while he was doing that, there was a battle going on behind him. There's a battle here as well. Switzerland versus Chinese Taipei as they go through together with 0.3 of a second between them. Evan Chen for Chinese Taipei pulls out, has a look, pulls back in again. Great to see 2 differing brands here, so evenly matched. The Mercedes versus the Ferrari, very different ways of, if you like, cracking the GT3 nut.
Yeah, very much indeed. One's mid-engine front, one's mid-engine rear. A bit of a battle coming as we come down into, and this is for 12th and 11th position, so that's been a change. So the Audi has taken over that battle, and so that was up into the first and second turns.
What about Puerto Rico versus Brazil as well? This now is for 9th place. Victor Gomez ahead of Bruno Baptista, so Baptista penalised after qualifying for an infringement under a red flag, and then having had a spin. So the Brazilian driver trying to fight back. The 2014 Formula 4 South American champion, Porsche champion. He's raced single-seaters in Europe as well. So Bruno Baptista, experienced driver, and I don't think it's going to be long before he gets himself, for Brazil, past Puerto Rico.
Well, the Ferrari has got good straight-line performance. We were seeing that battle that's taking place for 4th and 5th place with Chen in the number 68. That's the Chinese Taipei entry. So Ferrari has got good pace. We know that from other events that we've broadcast on here at Paul Ricard. They're a very, very effective car around the Paul Ricard circuit.
There is the Ferrari then. Evan Chen turns out of Le Beausset. So Switzerland versus Chinese Taipei. Now, yesterday, Switzerland was 7th in the first qualifying race, Chinese Taipei 11th. So they're running further up the order right now than they were yesterday. And still, by the way, Australia in the pits. So the damage sustained on that first lap, clearly a bit more serious than just a puncture.
Yeah, but one might suggest that the reason for that is because the drivers driving here now are the ones that are the more, let's say, experienced or professional of drivers. So comparing that with the grid that we had for last evening's race, they were the less experienced. So its ships are sort of...
So there over the line go the leaders, 0.9 of a second between them. Karel Basch dropping away a little bit now, isn't he? Because he's lost about a second on that last lap. I just wonder whether he might be being caught by Yannick Mettler for Switzerland. The answer right now is no. But Mettler doing his level best to shake off Chinese Taipei's Evan Chen. Ukraine 6th, Ivan Peklin still running nicely. Sam Neary for Team United Kingdom is 7th. Marchi Lee for Hong Kong China is 8th. Victor Gomez for Puerto Rico 9th. And Bruno Baptista for Brazil is 10th. So we have there the Chinese Taipei Ferrari closing right up. Evan Chen has certainly not settled for 5th place.
No, and I think Evan Chen, if he can get clear of the 54 Mercedes, the Swiss entry, he could make progress. But of course, that's the usual story. We know how closely these cars are matched. The balance of performance virtually eliminates any advantage one manufacturer will have over another one. And where's he going to find a place? He's not close enough to think about a move into the chicane. He closed up down at the far end of the racetrack, but that's fairly normal in any events that we ever would see here at Paul Ricard. In the back end of the Ferrari immediately snaps sideways as he turns right. That's, well, a Brazilian problem.
Big problem, because that car has suddenly slowed right down, and Bruno Baptista in second gear limps up the Mistral. He's going to be lucky to get that back to the pits, I would have thought. So it sounds mechanical more than a tyre, doesn't it?
It doesn't sound very healthy mechanically. Now, there's a lot of lash in a gearbox when you hear clunking and crashing its way back, but he's coming back virtually in limp home mode. Whatever the issue is, again, for Brazil, disappointment that's going to see their car back into the pits, but more importantly, back into the garage to effect whatever repairs they will need. And in reality, as we saw with Australia on the opening lap when the Grove Porsche got contact, puncture, that car's not returned to the circuit.
Leaders go by. France from Germany then, and the margin is just over a second between the two of them. Third, as they go over the timing line, Poland. Fabian Schiller for Germany, the fastest man on track. But I still think, yes, he wants to win the race, but he doesn't have to be leading at the end of his stint, because his co-driver quicker than Simon Gachet's co-driver for France on the evidence of yesterday. Hong Kong, China being given a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. So Marchi Lee, 8th, but he will fall down the order, a legacy of that penalty. Leaders go through, they're heading towards the Mistral straight once again here.
Yes, 1.5 seconds the gap when they came across start-finish line. And whether Fabian Schiller he's going to give Simon Gachet a bit of a hurry up. Suddenly the headlamp flashers becoming active on the second place Team Germany entry. Fabian Schiller, sector times fastest in sector 1. So he has closed the gap fractionally to the Team France entry. So there is the Brazilian Mercedes making its way into the pit lane and into the garage, I suspect.
I think you're right. And so the car limps its way at pit in. Number 44, the Acodis ASP team entry. Well, we don't often see Acodis ASP team cars with mechanical maladies, but it struck today as Bruno Baptista limps down the pit road. Now, the good news is that, all right, they might be starting further back on the grid for the main race, but it doesn't massively affect your chances of a good result in the main race later on. It's a clutch problem, Gemma tells us from the pit lane. She's been to ask the team, and so a clutch drama is what we're hearing for Brazil.
I don't know what kind of clutch problem it will be, because all the gear changes are done on the steering wheel, so it's a system which is pretty much standard across all the GT brands. The old-fashioned gear shifter, which of course is what a GT car should be all about, but modern technology has now got automatic shifts on the paddle on the steering wheel, and seamless shifts they are too. There's the third place, Polish Audi, and dropping further back. Karel Vats was 4 and a bit seconds, now 6.4 seconds behind the second place Team France Mercedes. There is the France, the second place Team Germany Mercedes.
So the margin between them was down to 0.4 of a second that time. Fabian Schiller doing 2 absolute bests in sectors. This is game on. We are 10 minutes away from the pit window opening, but you can anticipate the quicker drivers here to stay out for longer for their nations. But Fabian Schiller certainly now, he's giving Simon Gachet a very tough time indeed.
Well, he was giving him a lap ago, a bit of a hurry up on the headlamp flasher coming there. Again, he's at it, look. He can't stop it, can he? He just has to flash those lights.
But right now, there's no suggestion that Simon Gachet is going to crack under the pressure. But what he can't do is get away. He needs to build a big lead for Eric de Baard as they come now into the chicane and turning their way through the left, the right, the left, then back onto the Mistral. And that is the sorry sight of Brazil in the garage.
Yeah, it's not surprising if you do have a clutch problem. It's not something you're going to be able to fix on the pit lane, so it's got to be pushed into the garage and let the team get at it and rectify the problem. But look, Fabian Schiller, I think, has decided he wants to make a move. And look, a battle going on further through the field. That's for 4th place with Switzerland and Chinese Taipei. And further back, you've got Ukraine. And Sam Neary's not been able to make any progress, really, since the lights went out.
And Sam Neary's team manager has to go to the stewards immediately. So Sam Neary is being looked at for something. As you see there, the fight going on still for Switzerland and Chinese Taipei for 4th place. Yannick Mettler just fending off Evan Chen, who has got the pace to live with the Mercedes, but he just can't quite find a way through.
No, and he's had a little couple of places, runs very wide. I don't know whether that was... I don't know why he did that, but just simply like a lack of concentration. But nothing that is obvious that would have caused him to run wide. And other than running so close to the car ahead of you, maybe you do want to drop back a bit of clear air. But here's the battle beginning to be engaged with the lead two Mercedes-AMG GT3s. France leading Germany. Gap across the start-finish line, half a second.
And as I say, these drivers, the quicker of the two in the cars, so they are going to stay out for as long as they can. And Fabian Schiller hustling on, comes down through the chicane, down towards the Virage du Camp. Simon Gachet, the race leader for France. Fabian Schiller for Germany. Cars are the same, but the Acadis ASP team entry ahead of the SPS Automotive Performance car. That in the hands of Fabian Schiller, and that's Eric Debar for France, watching on.
Well, he's not too stressed. I would have thought Eric might have been getting himself prepared. While the pit stop window is yet to be opened, I mean, I would always want to be ready in case, for some unknown reason, Simon Gachet decides it's time for me to come in, hand over to my teammate. That ought to be an instruction from the team to tell the co-driver, be prepared, always be prepared. Just like the highway code, always be prepared.
Sam Neary, I understand, for the UK is being looked at for that moment on the first lap where we saw him running off the road, but there's a suspicion that he gained a place by going off the racetrack, and that is what's being looked at. This is the lead battle as the cars come out of Le Beausset. We mentioned earlier on that Marchi Li for Hong Kong China had been given a penalty. Let's try and piece all this together. So this is Marchi Li's view. That's Bruno Baptista for Brazil ahead. This is down at the Virage du Camp, so the Honda of Hong Kong China gets up the inside. There's the contact, but turns around the Mercedes. And then have a look at the Porsche, because Brenton Grove goes around the outside, and there's a bit of a biff and another biff between him and another car. That's where the puncture came from.
So that was a contact. The right rear of the Porsche got cut down. So here we are on to lap 9. As still the situation, status quo unchanged. France leads Germany, the gap fractionally up, but really it's academic, because when you're within that half-second window, there's not much difference between 0.6 and 4.499 of a second. And yet again, seeing the pace of Fabian Schiller, he's able to catch, but he can't do much about finding a way around.
What those replays also showed us was the contact that did for the suspension on Brenton Grove's Porsche. So we'd seen the puncture, but those two biffs that came from the Puerto Rico Ferrari of Victor Gomez was explaining why the car is in its garage. Still, the Earl Bamber Motorsport ran entry. Right, that is Marchi Li with this Damoclesian penalty to worry about. And this is the fight for 4th and 5th, Switzerland versus Chinese Taipei. Evan Chen is absolutely determined to be ahead by the pit stops.
Yeah, and he was slightly closer coming through turn 6 through 7 runs. A little bit wider than necessary, but he's got a bit of a momentum built up. Whether he can do anything again down in... the Mercedes is going defensive, realizing the Ferrari is closer, forcing the Ferrari to go the long way. Now dive up the inside. A good dummy by the Ferrari. Well done. Well done, Chinese Taipei.
Chinese Taipei's Evan Chen goes ahead of Switzerland's Yannick Mettler, and he's worked hard for that. Like 20 minutes he's been working to try and put that move together. Now we'll see whether Chinese Taipei can get away. Evan Chen accelerates 4th up towards Senior, and look at the background. You've got Ukraine versus United Kingdom.
And Sam Neary is suddenly finding pace. He's going to put a bit of heat on pressure onto the Ukrainian entry, the Aston Martin. So pit stop window will open in about 3.5 minutes, but I think all these drivers are, no. Wow.
Ukraine goes wide.
Yes,
Pecklin loses time. Sam Neary for the UK right with him.
Yeah, but Neary was unable to take any advantage of that. The Aston just about got back on track ahead of the United Kingdom entry, but Sam Neary will think, well, maybe is that my pressure causing those little errors to creep in?
Through they come together, nose to tail, and the pressure is now telling on Ivan Peklin. That car looking just a little bit ragged as it came into Virage du Pont there.
Yeah, maybe the car's just beginning to give up a little bit of grip. But out of the final turn on to start-finish straight performance, moving forward. So Sam Neary not able to do anything about the speed in the straight line of the Aston Martin. It's going to be in the turns where he will gain. Look how much he's closed down under braking and going through turns 1 and 2, then through this gentle curve to the left down into a fairly big braking zone before you go right left through the chicane. So Sam Neary has closed the gap, which was opening up on pit straight almost into the back of the Aston Martin. Swings to the left to make the undercut on the exit through 5. No opportunity. Be patient here through 6. Just position yourself to move when you come through this second part of turn 6, then the cut it back through turn 7. If you can carry extra speed, which Sam Neary, I think, ought to have been able to have done. Now under braking up into the chicane on the straight. Again, look at the speed the Aston has got. It's able to pull away all the time and really frustrate Sam Neary in the United Kingdom entry.
But Peklin made a mistake a lap ago. He might make another one, especially with Neary breathing down his neck. Neither of them exactly circuit experts, so they're both learning and learning fast.
Yeah, the Aston has not got the grip. It's got straight line performance there. We see the Ukrainian flag and proudly being displayed by Ukrainian fans around the racetrack. So now he gains on the straight, but he loses. Here 1 lap ago ran way wide at Le Poussey, got the car out onto the dirty stuff. This time, better position. Sam Neary not able to move up the inside to try and get alongside. So he's got to be patient.
Nose to tail they run. Sam Neary trying to find a gap. He knows also that the pit window opens in about 2 minutes' time. Now, does he bail because he's a bit stuck in traffic and put Ian Loggy into the car? Ian Loggy knows the Evo version better than Sam does. Sam way up the curb there, so that shortens the run into Virage du Pont. But Ivan Peklin looking as though he's calmed down now. That car pulls away coming out of the corner as well, the Aston Martin of Ukraine.
Yeah, whatever way the Aston is working, it's certainly got good performance in a straight line, and that's a big frustration for the United Kingdom entry. There's nothing Sam Neary has been able to do. He can close all around the racetrack under braking through the corners, the 15 turns here, Paul Ricard. But as soon as the Aston Martin gets on the straight, it's up and gone.
So they dive now down towards the chicane, heading towards the Virage du Camp. Go right, go left. Sam Neary, remember, being looked at for going off the road and gaining an advantage on the opening lap of the race. He sort of got spat out of the pack, but it is being looked at by the officials.
I think it's force majeure. For the images we have seen, I can't think there was any malice involved in what Sam Neary was doing.
Now, this is the lead battle, and you can see now just how far back the Polish Audi has fallen. Look at Karol Basz. Considering that that car was absolutely with the race leaders on the first lap, he is now the best part of 10 seconds adrift. I just wonder whether he's got a problem, because the lap times are nearly a second a lap slower than the leaders now.
Well, whatever the reasons are, different to what we saw last evening when that Audi was being driven really hard and was making progress all the way. Here's the battle we were looking at just a moment ago, the battle for 6th position, with the Ukrainian Aston Martin in 6th and the United Kingdom Mercedes AMG GT3 in 7th position. Sam Neary can close all around the racetrack where you get the twiddly turny bits, but when it comes to the straight line bits, and there we see already Valentin Pierberg getting himself prepared to take over. I suspect that Fabian Schiller may be the earlier of the 2 stoppers, because I think Simon Gachet will want to stay out and use the advantage of having the lead before he hands over to Eric Devar, his co-driver.
We're getting track limit penalties of 5 seconds for Lithuania,
up the inside,
Hong Kong, China, and a change as Sam Neary has done it. He's gone by on the inside line. So Sam Neary for UK goes 6th, goes through. Now, can he get away? I think he's one that has escaped penalties thus far for track limit offences, at least, but others are going to be affected when the cars make their pit stops, and that won't be far away because the window is now open.
So Sam Neary has finally made it through into 6th position, and now that he's cleared the Aston Martin, he ought to be able to move away from it. He shouldn't really be being challenged, but he's got a further 7.2 seconds before he can even find a way to catch up to the Swiss entry Mercedes AMG GT3 of Mettler in 5th position. There is our race leader into the chicane on the 13th lap, and the gap between 1st and 2nd is stretched by a 1/10 of a second up to 3/4 of a second. It's all I think, somewhat academic. It's going to be more about what Acutis ASP can do with their pit stop entry, as the Spanish entry makes an early pit stop, and the fact that pit lane is only open by just over a minute.
But yesterday we did see for Spain Fernando Navarrete be faster than Gonzalo de Andrés, so it makes sense to get the quicker driver in, maximise his time. But Spain, in a sense, is the nation doing this in reverse, because pretty much every other country has got the faster driver in now for this stint. Fernando Navarrete then jumps in to the Spanish car. And so Motorsport Team Spain getting him ready to go. The gap stretching a little bit between the race leaders, neither of whom are coming in this time, of course.
Yes, no, they're not. The gap looks to be bigger than the 3/4 of a second it was when they came across the line at the beginning of the lap they're about to complete. And there is third place Audi, Karel Basch, but he's dropped 10 seconds behind second place and 11 seconds behind the race leader. So he will continue on. So the front 6-8 cars probably going to hang it out until the pit lane window opens or closes in about another 7 or 8 minutes.
So Eric Debard getting ready to go, as Simon Gachet it is that leads by 1 second for France. Fabian Schiller there in second place. He's been a bit elasticated in his efforts to close on the leader, hasn't he? He's caught, he's dropped back, he's caught, he's dropped back. Never been able to make a move. It's going to be a really interesting second stint. And with Karel Basch falling away, that's going to put the pressure onto his co-driver Marcin Jedlinski, who will take over the Polish entry. Evan and Max Chen fourth for Chinese Taipei. I wonder what progress Ian Logie might be able to make for United Kingdom. It's about half a minute back, though, in 6th place.
It'll be a big task for Ian Logie to make significant progress. The car that they're going to be really battling with will be the 54 Swiss entry, possibly Chinese Taipei. It just depends at which point they make the pit stops and just which of the co-drivers that will take over will be the best equipped to make progress.
So here are the two leading Mercedes making the run into senior. So Spain, Hong Kong, China and Lithuania, all with 5-second time penalties for track limit abuses. To the eye, that lead gap is stretching, but I still think Fabian Schiller and Germany in the box seat, given the pace that we saw from Valentin Pierburg yesterday. Simon Gachet then hustles on, races with Eric Debard in GT4 Mercedes, the French drivers, but now the pair of them teaming up in GT3 machinery.
I suspect that this race outcome will be determined not so much by these drivers or their co-drivers. It'll be which of the two Mercedes teams. You've got Acutis ASP and then you've got the SPS Automotive Product. Which of those two teams? And yesterday it was the German entry which was the quicker in the pit lane over the French entry. So right now France is leading, Germany's in second place. That's going to be, to me, the determining outcome of who will win this race.
Well, there for Puerto Rico is Victor Gomez and Ivan Peklin, having lost out to United Kingdom. That Ukraine entry falling back into the clutches of Puerto Rico now, keeping an eye to see if anybody goes the other side of that white blend line to pit in. And as the cars come up towards the line, Yannick Mettler, Switzerland, being caught by Sam Neary for United Kingdom. So now that he's cleared Ukraine, Sam Neary in a big, big hurry. But of course, that stint has probably only got another 5 minutes, if that, left in it. Peklin for Ukraine, Gomez for Puerto Rico. Go across the line together. 14 laps now in the book, and half the race remains.
So we're just literally coming up to midway in the race. As Puerto Rican Ferrari again, it's at that very abrupt sort of sudden snap at the rear, but not really delaying the performance of Gomez Donato, the fourth. It's a race battle. Gap was a second when they came across start-finish line, and I suspect it's not much different as they come on to the second half of the Mistral Straight.
Now, what's going on with the Polish Audi third? Because Karel Basch, a best lap time today, slower than he was doing yesterday, and he was very quick yesterday, and that car is now 13 seconds off the lead, having been right there at the start.
All I can think is that because ambient track, but particularly track temperatures, are way down on what we had Friday evening, that he's not getting the best performance out of the Audi package with the Pirelli tyre. That's the only obvious reason. The driver hasn't suddenly lost time. There's only something that only things he can do with the equipment he's got in the conditions we're running in. And the only thing that is different to me is the track temperature is down as the German entry dives into the pit lane. And this is going to be crunch time for Germany.
It is. So down the pit lane from second place comes Germany. Fabian Schiller will give way to Valentin Pierberg as the car heads now down towards its pit box. There is Valentin Pierberg. Of course, he's got the advantage of racing a GT3 Mercedes AMG regularly over a season, whereas Eric Debard for France does not. He races the GT4 version, very different feel to the car. Valentin Pierberg folds himself into the German Mercedes. Fabian Schiller, his co-driver, helps with the belts. The tyre pressures are checked. You don't do tyre changing in this race like you would in a Fanatec GT race, for example. And so now Simon Gachet, without any pressure for a lap, can concentrate purely on his own line, his own efforts, and try just to stretch that margin by another couple of tenths if he can. Heads through Saint-Baume, and Eric Debard is ready to take over this time.
Indeed, it is the right decision by Kudus to bring that car in immediately following the German entry. So now Germany rolling down the pit lane, waiting to see how long their pit stop will have taken. The clock is ticking away, coming up to 55 seconds, and it'll probably be about 1 minute and 6 or 7 seconds. That was the time we saw last evening for Team Germany. So 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 70.1 seconds for that German entry pit stop.
And 69 is the regulation time. So if you're under that, then you find yourself in strife. Simon Gachet then, bound for pit in this time, comes through Le Beausset, fighting for the apex in the second part of the corner. Back onto the power, goes left now, heading through Bendor on towards the Virage de la Tour. Rattles it up the curb. He was here a couple of weeks ago racing in the final races in the French GT Championship for GT4 cars. And does he come into the pits this time? No! Stays out for one more lap. He's cutting this very fine indeed. Given that there's only a couple of minutes left in the window and a flying lap is 2 minutes 3, he should be just in before the window closes, but it's going to be very tight.
I suspect that if you measure the time in, because you're not having to go through the final turn, which is a slow second gear, he's got a reasonably good run in, and because the Team France pit is in the early part of the pit lane, but it's a pit lane demarcation line, so it's a very close call. I mean, this is Akota's ASP are running it right to the very limit of what is available, giving Simon Gachet the maximum amount of time as the Polish Audi makes its way in or makes its way out.
As long as you're in before the window closes, that's fine. You don't have to have done the stop, the actual driver change. Switzerland, Dexter Müller taking over. That's Sam Neary then, giving way now to Ian Loggy. Ukraine in as well, so to Puerto Rico. And Sam Neary straps in Ian Loggy. The Ram Racing mechanics at Sky Tempesta Racing make sure that all is well with the car and the tyre pressure is ready for that to go blasting back into the fray.
It's not just the seat belts have got to be attached, there's also radio connections, and sometimes drivers have got air hoses, sometimes they've got a drinks bottle. I don't think you need a drinks bottle at this time of year and this ambient temperature, but nevertheless, the few additional, so the...
Right, that's Ian Loggy for the United Kingdom away. You've got Marcin Jadlinski there for Poland blasting back into the race. Now, as all the pit stops bar one are done, the one that isn't is for the race-leading France Mercedes. Now, Simon Gachet has got to be at pit in over the line before 25.00 on the clock. You're riding with him, so he's got 16 seconds to get himself to the pit entry line. Let's see. Works the car now into the pits. So this is what John was talking about. You cut off a massive chunk of that last corner. There's the line. 6 seconds grace. He's in.
Wow, that's running it very, very finely indeed. But Simon Gachet was up to the task, and he's brought that car in at the latest possible opportunity. So he's got to try and find a way to not lose time to what has been the two quickest pit stops have been identical at time. The Polish entry with the Audi and the German entry with the Mercedes. So both did a 1 minute 10.1 second pit stop, and that is as close as you can get to that 69-second limit.
Absolutely right. So Simon Gachet has given Eric Debard the best possible chance, but this is the nation that they're going to be up against then. So France making its mandatory pit stop, 69 seconds. This is Germany. Valentin Pierberg has taken over that car. They were 70.1 seconds. Now, I would offer you as well that Lithuania is under the pit stop time, 68.6 seconds. They're slightly under, aren't they? So might be a penalty coming for Lithuania. We'll keep an eye to that. There is Germany. There is France. Eric Debar behind the wheel.
It's well, not quite a no-brainer because we've still got 2 turns for Team Germany to make. As France rolls down the pit lane there, you can see the car. So who's going to come out in front? What time has the France pit stop been? Have they gained? Well, they can't have gained an awful lot, otherwise there might be a penalty. Have they lost time? 10.1, 9.8.
69.8 plays 70.1. So they've gained 3/10 on the pit stops, and they'll also have gained a little bit more by keeping the quicker driver in for 1 extra lap. So Simon Gachet did a longer stint than did Fabian Schiller. So now Eric Debar has got to get himself up into the groove, but Valentin Pierberg will be hunting him down.
But a good job by Kodos ASP to come back. A pit stop yesterday, which was not quite as quick as the one they've just executed, and given Debar the benefit as Valentin Pierberg has now got the task of trying to run down the Team France Mercedes-AMG GT3 entry as Pierberg goes on. But you can see the gap. I mean, the gap has been as bigger than it was at any point in reality in the first phase of this race. So a big task for Pierberg. Maybe he can run down the France entry, but again, can he find a way around? 22 minutes of this race remaining. The gap is probably about 4 seconds or maybe a little over as they come into the chicane.
And then we'll see what the order is behind and who the risers and fallers are after the pit stops into this second stint. So the AM drivers then behind the wheels. Now there is the margin. You can see Eric Debar with the clock ticking 4.7. It's coming down in between the sectors. So yes, Pierberg is catching. He's got 22 minutes and change to catch and pass, and that could be the harder bit. And
remember, this is France's outlap, where Pierberg's had the benefit of having his outlap and he's got himself back in. Back in the driving seat, literally, it means that he's done his exploratory lap. Track conditions are different. Everything was different to how he found it last night. Remember, he started this race last night. Eric Debar has just jumped into the race-leading Mercedes, so he's just acclimatizing and using a lot of the racetrack in the process.
He is indeed, and I make the point again that he's not a regular GT3 racer. Valentin Pierberg is. So Eric Debar comes up across the timing line with 21 minutes and change on the clock. Valentin Pierberg is behind him. It's France versus Germany. Same cars, different teams, and the gap between the pair of them now then with 21.5 minutes to go is just under 5 seconds, 4.9.
That's actually extended in the favour of France because there were 4.7 seconds when they came out of the chicane at the end of the middle of the scene. So, in fact, Eric Debar has done a very good job on that outlap indeed, and Ian Logie likewise.
Yeah, because he's jumped ahead of Chinese Taipei, so the United Kingdom up into 5th at the expense of Chinese Taipei here. This is Ian Logie in a car that he's really comfortable, really familiar with, and all the engineers operating it, he knows them, so very much at home here. And this year's British GT champion goes through now into 5th place. And this is how he did it, John.
Yes, down into Le Bouzet, the Ferrari high up, taking the high line. The Mercedes dives down, hugs the inside line, a bit like racing in an oval. Some drivers stay low and hug that low line. Ian Logie did that and got the benefit and got the position.
Effort being made there by Puerto Rico up against Lithuania. No way through there. So Pio Venetti trying to get himself up past Navickauskas. Couldn't do it. So Navickauskas for Lithuania, keeping at bay, at least for the moment. Francesco Pio Venetti, Audi versus Ferrari. 7th and 8th they run. Lithuania just fending off Puerto Rico at the moment. So Imantas Navickauskas for Lithuania comes here, down towards the Virage du Camp. And for Puerto Rico, Francesco Pio Venetti has fallen away a little bit compared to the pace of Victor Gomez earlier on.
But I do love the graphics on the Puerto Rican Ferrari. I mean, some of the graphics, sort of, you might say, are the bog standard, but that one, it just jumps out of the screen at you.
Yeah. As also, in fairness, as the Hong Kong China livery, whether it's on the GT car or a touring car, as we'll see over the weekend as well. Some great liveries put onto the cars to represent the colours of their nations. There is the Puerto Rican Ferrari, and Francesco Pio Venetti starting to drop away just a touch now with 20 minutes to go. 1/3 of the race remains.
So that's the view looking from scene down to the end of the Mistral Straight, which is the Ukrainian Aston Martin going through. And there is Puerto Rico running in 9th position. So 9th, 8th, 7th, all within 3 and a bit seconds of one another, but getting on top of the Ukrainian or the Lithuanian Audi is going to be a different task. And coming through the middle of the final sector, is it the screen, or is it everything looking more just maybe the way the light is shining around? It's almost like a haze is over the circuit in certain parts.
So the race leading cars accelerate on lap number 20 with the gap down to 4.2 seconds between France and Germany. And so Simon Gachet, having done his stint for Team France, can watch all of this now, but he's a nervous spectator. Let's interrupt him. He's with Gemma Scott in the pit lane.
So when you were pushing ever so hard, of course, you had to get that gap up. And since you've changed over now, the gap's reducing slightly with Eric behind the wheel.
Yeah, true. The car was really good to drive, honestly, since the beginning. We had only new set on the left part compared to Fabian. He had four tire new, so yeah, honestly, it was a good stint. Now we just need to see what Eric can do.
And just a quick word there on that pit stop window. You left that right to the end, right?
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. My engineer told me 2 more laps, and I saw on the mirror Fabian box, so I was a bit confused, but let's see.
You got it in by 6 seconds, so it was very well calculated.
Yeah, so congrats for him.
Thank you, have a good one.
Well, the race officials are having a look at that pit stop. They're also looking at Lithuania's, but we know why that is. It's because it's under the 69 seconds. But I think the officials want to make sure that he was at the pit entry line, not just the timing loop, at the given time.
Oh, nothing goes undiscovered, does it? I mean,
no.
It's every potential infraction of regulations is going to be investigated. As we see the first and second place Mercedes-AMG GT3s make their way into turns 1 and 2, and the German entry, well, certainly looking at Valentin Pierberg, leaving nothing on the table. The gap's down to 3.3 seconds, so he is on a charge, and he's taken on that last lap. You can see over the last 3 laps, a second on lap 18.7 of a second, lap 19, 0.8 of a second. So he's taking significantly more than half a second, probably 3/4 of a second a lap consistently over those last 3 laps. So Pierberg is on a charge.
He is, but he's not there yet. The gap, as you say, is certainly coming down. Now, what's happening behind? For Poland, Marcin Jedlinski is running 3rd. Then you've got Switzerland 4th, Dexter Muller, who is dropping back. But Ian Loggy is quicker than the 2 ahead of him. In fact, Ian Loggy is quicker than everybody apart from Valentin Pierberg. So the United Kingdom entry is certainly good for 1 more place before the very end of the race. Whether it can catch up to Poland, I rather doubt. But Ian Loggy, 5th for UK, should be 4th by the end of the race.
All things being equal, Ian Loggy will catch well before the end of the race, and of course catching a normal story, finding a way around is another deal, but he is certainly running a very quick pace right now, and 4th place will be within his grasp with, what, 15 and a bit minutes of the race remaining.
So Germany using all of the racetrack there. Valentin Pierberg accelerates through. And there is that gap between Switzerland and United Kingdom that's come right down. Ian Loggy quicker, hunting down Switzerland. And the change is on here for 4th place, isn't it?
They took 2.1 seconds out of the Swiss entry on lap 20. That's a massive amount of time. Now, whether that was somebody because he's that much quicker, or whether the Swiss entry made a little error and that's where the time lost. But catching, coming up into the scene, this is the view from on board the United Kingdom entry all the way around. The quickest corner on the racetrack closes even, going into Le Bousset, runs now slightly the higher line, contrasting that when he got past the Ferrari, went down low. The pace of the Swiss entry is going to control what Ian Loggy is capable of doing. And you can catch, we know this is from time immemorial with these GT3 cars, you can catch where you're going to find a way past. Well, the thing that Ian Loggy will want to do is he's brought that momentum to the table and has caught the Swiss entry. He doesn't want to get stalled out and have his pace determined by the Swiss car. Dives up the inside. It's a big, can he get away with it? Was there contact? Well, I think there might have been a very light the right rear for the Swiss entry, but Ian Loggy, the the Scottish driver used all that personality and character, hip and shouldered his way through.
Absolutely. British GT champion Ian Logie for the UK goes through. Scotsman by birth, Cheshire resident these days, Ian Logie, and he's gone by then for the United Kingdom up into 4th place. And drama there for Brazil, back on the track but still in strife.
Well, where abouts was that? I'm just trying to work out, because I think that might have been coming off scene. I think he must have spun on the exit of scene.
And you don't have a small spin there. That's a proper Code Brown moment. Right, so Adalberto Baptista, who is 14 laps down, but they're using this as a test session. He's back in the race. Ian Logie for UK, storming away from Switzerland now. Dexter Muller behind him, falling back a little bit. And the Le Mans Cup GT3 racer and Pro-Am racer from the International GT Open Championship falling away. But this is how he lost the place to a very robust Ian Logie.
Yeah, I mean, there's a late move down the inside into Virage Dupont. There you can see the angle now. He cuts from left, launches it down the inside. I don't think the Swiss entry expected to have that overtake, and there was contact. Maybe you'd call that a racing incident. So I don't think there's anything untoward, but certainly Ian Logie, a man on a mission, dives down the inside. There's the contact. So whether that will be determined to be an overtake that was unfair, I don't know. That's up to the race director and the stewards to determine.
Well, certainly Ian Logie has got the pace, as we have been saying, because he's gone storming away. There, Eric de Baard still leads. Now, yes, that gap is coming down, but Valentin Pierberger's not got there yet. And again, we come to the balance of performance. It is going to be really interesting to see when Pierberg catches, if at all, how easily he can get past, because the cars are going to run at a very similar pace. Catching in a GT3 car is one thing, overtaking is a completely different kettle of fish.
Remember what Simon Gachet said, there's the Brazil Mercedes in the pit. Simon Gachet said we had 2 new sets of tyres on the left side, whereas the German entry had 4 new tyres. That may ultimately become, with 12 minutes remaining, the determining factor. It may just be that the German Mercedes entry has got that little bit more bite, albeit we're now sort of, 50-odd seconds into this race.
I'll come back to tyres in a moment just to make a point about them. First, let's just catch up with the Brazilian spin, and Alberto Baptista loses it. Well, that set of tyres can go in the bin, because they are going to be like 50p coins.
Well, I was going to say a threepenny bit. They'll be flat spotted. There is the car in the pit lane. There's a spare tyre being brought up to the left rear of the car. The left rear would be the tyre that was the one that lost adhesion. So that's the one that's going to suffer most. But I think probably all 4 will be pretty much trash.
Absolutely. Now, just to make the point about tyres, you get 5 sets for the weekend. So it makes sense if you can use half a set in these qualifying races and keep a fresh, full set for the main race where the medals are, because that's the real purpose of the weekend.
Down to the cords. And that tyre is, well, that's a souvenir for somebody. I hope somebody around the racetrack might walk away with that as a souvenir for a weekend here at the FIA World Motorsport Games. I think, what a great weekend I've had. And look at the souvenir I've got.
Can't do much else with it apart from make a coffee table. Leaders over the line. France still leads. Germany second. But you put them on a full, fresh set of tyres in the main race, and it could be a very different story. So now Eric de Baard, on only 2 new tyres, has got to try and work this car very hard indeed. Yesterday, in the race that took us into the darkness, they did 29 laps. They are on lap 24 now, so 29 is your target for Lappery, and the gap is down to 1.4 seconds. Pierberg is, for Germany, nearly up with France for the lead.
And you can see on screen how much is taken out of the car. Lap 23, 0.8 of a second. I mean, when you're leading the race, Eric de Baard driving wheel perfectly, doing the maximum he's got with the equipment he has, and all of a sudden the German entry just running you down mercilessly.
But Eric de Baard knows how to defend us there. Through goes Spain, ahead of Hong Kong, China. So Fernando Navarrete gets ahead of Paul Ip for 10th place, and having secured the position, he's going to be able to accelerate away. Mercedes ahead of Honda, Spain ahead of Hong Kong, China now. Fernando Navarrete was really racy yesterday in the first stint. We're seeing it from him again here in the second stint right now. And this is Paul Ip's view as he starts to fall away. these cars a couple of seconds on the last lap slower than the race leaders, but of course the likes of Paul Lipp has done hardly any racing miles around Paul Ricard, whereas the likes of an Eric de Baar, Simon Gachet, a Fabian Schiller, a Valentin Pierberg, they've done a whole lot more in their careers.
There's the lead gap, and you can see visually it's down to, well, it was 1.4 seconds coming across the line. It is now under 1 second. And the momentum clearly with Valentin Pierberg. He's decided to get on the old headlamp flasher and give Eric de Baar a bit of a hurry up, and well, same old story. Catch where you can catch, but where you can overtake.
Yeah, he's nearly with him, isn't he? Now Valentin Pierberg. So France versus Germany. The gap is coming down and down and down and down and down. Pierberg doesn't have to win this race necessarily because the medals come in that main race, but he's a racer. Of course he wants to win. Comes out of the Virage du Pont, now back onto the power. Accelerates on this long drag past the pits. France versus Germany. There is certainly less than a second in it as they break the beam. They now go down towards the first corner with the margin 0.4 of a second. Is this the lap on which Germany makes its bid for race leadership?
Well, Pierberg would like to think it will be. I don't know whereabouts on the racetrack he thinks he's going to find a way past, but coming down into the chicane, he's on the headlamp flasher again, trying to distract Eric de Baar. Probably, well, you can see again, 0.1 of a second here, a second on the last lap. That's a bunch of time. Now, almost into the back of the France Mercedes as they come through turn 5 into turn 6. So he is going to be lining up the France entry, not here, but into the chicane. That will be his first significant opportunity to find a way to take the lead of this race. Eric de Baar may well go defensive and go more towards the middle of the racetrack to deny. Oh, what have I said? Did I predict it or did I predict it?
It's like you've been here before. Down they come towards the chicane. France ahead of Germany, closing up a little bit, maybe under braking. Valentin Pierberg applying the pressure all the time. He's got time on his side, and there's a little error out of France. Eric de Baar gets down the power and the back wags. Germany on the prowl now. Pierberg lines up to have a go, maybe on the inside at senior. Eric de Baar feeling the pressure, and surely he can't resist for 7.5 more minutes.
He will try it into Le Bousset. That's the long right-hand corner, the semi-bank corner. Here he goes. Pass is made on the exit of scene. So clean and easy pass, ultimately, for Valentin Pierberg. I thought he might have been trying to do it into Le Bousset, but he didn't need to bother. The France Mercedes ran wide on the exit of scene, and that was a gift to Valentin Pierberg for the Team Germany entry.
Applause from the team in the pit box. A drive-through penalty for Lithuania for not serving the 5-second time penalty in the pit stop. So it is Aimantis Navikauskas who is being given the penalty as Valentin Pierberg for Germany leads the way. Germany, a nation represented across many of the disciplines and accelerating now, looking for a second on-track win of the weekend ahead of France. Yesterday, the winning margin was 22 seconds. It's going to be a lot less than that. But as they break the beam this time and go through, Eric de Baar hustles on in pursuit of Valentin Pierberg. So we're on lap 26 out of a projected 29. Germany looking good for the race win, and Fabian Schiller already in civvies says, well, I've done my work for this race at least. And now we're in the lead.
Well, the decision by SPS Automotive Performance to put 4 new tyres on the Team Germany entry has been justified. If you want to worry about winning or not winning, coming second or winning, that's the reason why. It's basically about the level of grip one of the 2 Mercedes AMG GT3s had over the other.
And it's going to give them 1 point for race 1, 1 point for race 2, and therefore pole position ahead of France on the front row of the grid. So it sets them up very nicely into that main race where one would anticipate it will be the AMs that will go first. So it'll be a sort of mirror of yesterday's first qualifying race. You're on board with Eric de Baar having to settle for second place on this lap 26 now up the Mistral Straight. There, still charging along, is Ian Loggy for United Kingdom. Now he's 12.7 seconds back from Marcin Jedlinski. 5.5 minutes remain. He's 3 seconds a lap quicker. He's not going to get there in time, but it's going to be close, isn't it, for third place? He's absolutely on a mission.
I mean, 3 seconds out of that position charge. I mean, where do you find 3 seconds? There is the car. He's trying to catch the 777 Team Poland Audi entry, but 12.7 seconds. Well, 5 minutes remaining. He can maybe, at best, have that gap, but he ain't going to close it down. There is Ian Loggy, who's driven a really, really good stint indeed. There is the third place Polish Audi on the exit of the chicane. You can just see the United Kingdom Mercedes enter the chicane. So the gap, when they came across the line, 12.7 seconds. He'll get it down to somewhere right 7 or 8 seconds, I suspect, at the point when the checkered flag comes out.
So there is Ian Loggy. Then the car behind is the many laps down Brazil entry of Adalberto Baptista. So
the spinning Brazil entry.
Exactly. It's 16 laps adrift, so he is still circulating. Mileage is important. That's why they need that car on the track for as long as possible. Leaders go through, 1.3 seconds between the pair. And now Ian Loggy chasing Marcin Jedlinski, who did a 2 minutes 10.3 last time. Ian Loggy did a 2 minutes 7.2. And the cars accelerating their way up towards the completion of lap 26. But Ian Loggy for the podium, it's possibly just out of reach, but it won't be too much of a gap, as I say.
Well, it was 12.7 seconds. I suspect it's going to be somewhere maybe into single figures, but certainly around about 10 seconds. The pace that we're seeing Ian Loggy deliver for the United Kingdom entry has been very, very impressive indeed. So comes across start-finish line. Now there it is. And what is the gap? Well, it looks like it's extended up to 13 seconds. So we were bigging up the performance by Ian Loggy, but didn't deliver on that last lap.
Yeah, that time Marcin Jedlinski responded and was quicker. So he is pulled away. Now, what about the Yevgen Sokolovsky Ukraine entry? That's catching Chinese Taipei for 6th place. This is on, because with 3.5 minutes to go, that gap has come down from 2.9 seconds to 11 tenths. So Ukraine for the top 6. This is on.
With this lap and one more to go, Aston, remember, has got really good straight line performance. So with there are 3 relatively long straights here on this Paul Ricard Grand Prix circuit. The loop that we're using is including the chicane. So if Ukraine can just use the strengths that they've got and try and run the Ferrari down on one of the quicker parts of the racetrack, they've got a realistic chance of gaining another position.
Battle on here, Puerto Rico versus Spain as well. It's all coming together, late race, isn't it? Puerto Rico's Francesco Piovanetti, Fernando Navarrete for Spain, absolutely nose to tail. This is for 8th place, so we've got a change imminent for 6th, another one for 8th. They both got up past Armantis Navicaukas of Lithuania, and Spain for another position before the end should be possible.
I think it's going to be done maybe on the entry into the chicane. The Puerto Rico Ferrari does not have to wander around the racetrack to defend. This under brakes, whether the Spanish entered Mercedes does what it's got, just simply had a little bit more bite and grip under braking, and in fact that was an easy overtake. Puerto Rico didn't offer a lot of resistance. They realized the pace at which they were being caught, it was inevitable, and we've got just 2 minutes of this race to go.
Absolutely, it's flown by, hasn't it? So here, with one change we've just seen for 8th place, the 6th place change has not yet happened. So Yevgen Sokolovsky is right there on the back of Evan Chen. So the Chinese Taipei Ferrari has fallen back a little bit in this second stint. The Ukraine Aston Martin hustling on, and Sokolovsky thinks about making a dive up on the inside, but he's not quite able to do it there.
No, it's just a question of, that's a difficult part of the racetrack. If you put yourself up the inside, then you're wrong-footed for the exit of the corner. So here now, get yourself into line, get close to the rear of the Ferrari. Don't dive down the inside unless you've got a gap, and there's a closing gap, and again the inevitable happens. The Ferrari had no idea that the Ukrainian Aston Martin was down the inside. In fact, it was a clean overtake. Just simply the Puerto Rican Ferrari did not know the Ukrainian Aston Martin was there.
And it's also going to lose another place. Look, Puerto Rico, Chinese Taipei, I should say, because Spain will go through as well. So Spain up to 7th. So Chinese Taipei 8th now. Contact and time lost all going against them. The race leader is on lap 28. We've got less than a minute left in the race. And Chinese Taipei then on the back foot, really, now as a legacy of the incidents. Here's the replay, John.
Yes, you can see the Aston lines itself up. Then it gets a clean run down the inside. It is fair and square alongside the Ferrari, and just the Ferrari did not know the Aston Martin was there, turned in, and all of a sudden the collision occurred.
Lead gap come down, half a minute to go, one more lap, so we are going to get to my magic number of 29, but Eric Debard is coming back at Valentin Pierberg here. This isn't done yet, is it?
Looked like it was a done deal about 3 laps ago when the overtake took place. Now Eric Debard has come back on his last lap. Well, they were within a 10th of a second of lap time on that final lap, but Eric Debard has found momentum. There you can see over the last 3 laps he picked up over not 6/10 of a second on lap 27, 3/10 of a second on lap. The last 2 laps, the French entry has been significantly quicker than the lead German entry. Now, I don't know why.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because certainly Eric Debard now is giving Valentin Pierberg a tough time of it. The two of them run together. But yeah, you would have anticipated on the evidence of yesterday that Valentin would have been able to get away. And maybe on this lap, he is a little bit quicker. He certainly pulled out another 2/10 in the first sector, and that margin stretches again, look, going on to the Mistral.
Difficult sometimes to understand why somebody, a car, lead car or a pursuing car, look here, Spain closing now on the Ukraine, and this has got the momentum behind the Spanish entry. Again, down to the part of the circuit where the Aston made that overtake one lap ago, and all wandering around all over the racetrack. Watch for the undercut from Spain. They're going to gain the advantage on the acceleration off the final turn onto start-finish straight. But the Aston, that we know, has got good straight-line performance, cannot hold the Spanish Mercedes-Benz to bay. It is going to do that. So they're side-by-side, down start-finish straight, and the Aston Martin, no, they've backed out of it and given that position away to Spain.
So Fernando Navarrete goes 6th, Yevgen Sokolovsky down to 7th. It is Spain ahead of Ukraine. We're on the last lap. Here are the leaders heading to the checkered flag. It's been another cracking race, hasn't it, with so much going on. But Germany will prevail once more in the GT Cup. There's the GT Sprint tomorrow, different driver, but the same GT3 principle for GT cars. But right now, with the main race to come this afternoon, it is 2-0 as far as Germany is concerned over France, because Germany will win both qualifying races. Fabian Schiller, Valentin Pierberg for Germany out of the last corner, checkered flag at the ready, and it is 2 wins in the 2 qualifying races for Germany in the FIA Motorsport Games within the GT Cup. Applause at SPS Automotive Performance for Valentin Pierberg and Fabian Schiller. There he is. They win qualifying race 2. France second, Eric Debar and Simon Gachet, and third is going to be this rather distant Audi, but it's been a good effort by Poland, one better than in Q Race 1. So a 4th and a 3rd for the Polish Audi, with Ian Loggy having fallen away towards the end because the gap was up to 10 seconds again last time. Coming up towards the timing line, there is the Audi. You can see the Mercedes in the background. So Poland 3rd, Marcin Jedlinski and Karol Bash. 4th, Sam Neary and Ian Loggy for United Kingdom. There, coming over the line, is the Mercedes.
Clawed back a little bit of time. It finished 8.1 seconds behind the 3rd place Audi of the Polish team. But what it says to me is what an emphatic domination from the different entrants for the France and Germany, but with the common Mercedes-AMG GT3. Those Mercedes just right now, and we can see it even with Spain, the pace they've had.
So there, coming up towards the line, is going to be Spain for 6th. Switzerland 5th, by the way. Dexter Müller has brought the car over the line. Fernando Navarrete in a car that was a lap down yesterday, well in the mix at the end. But when you put the 5-second penalty on for track limit abuses, it drops to 7th. So Yevgen Sokolovsky for Ukraine does retake 6th. Navarrete for Spain 7th. Chinese Taipei's Evan and Max Chen 8th, 9th is Puerto Rico, and 10th, Hong Kong, China. Fabian Schiller wins for Germany with Valentin Pierberg, and Fabian Schiller is able to have a word with Gemma Scott, while Valentin Pierberg brings the car in.
Fabian, you can get that first place hat on there. That's another fantastic result and sets up a really nice start for the medal race later on.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had 2 good qualifying races with a win yesterday, a win today. So, yeah, all set for this afternoon.
And of course, very proud to be representing your country and on fine form.
Of course, yeah, it's great to represent Germany here. It's a great event, it's huge, and we had great fun so far. Valentin did the work so far, so for me it was pretty easy. Yesterday he did an amazing job, today he did the pass for P1, so yeah, all set for this afternoon, and we are very excited.
Thank you very much, well done again.
Thank you very much.
So 2 wins for Fabian Schiller and for Valentin Pierberg for Germany. That will give them pole position for the main race, and it's the main race that the medals come from later on this afternoon, and that is going to be on track at around about 2 o'clock local time here at Le Castellet. Germany, France, Poland 1, 2, 3, United Kingdom 4. There is the German entry making its way back to the technical area in the pit lane, and the drivers then get themselves set for the main race later on. Germany wins the GT Cup qualifying race 2 from France, the gap having gone right up to 6 seconds on that last lap, with in 3rd place Poland, 4th United Kingdom, and 5th Switzerland. Ukraine 6th ahead of a penalised Spain, 8th Chinese Taipei from Puerto Rico, and then Hong Kong, China 10th. Lithuania 11th, Brazil 12th, many laps down, and Australia only doing really one lap to get back into the pit lane after damage on the first lap. Valentin Pierberg and Fabian Schiller, the drivers for Germany. For France, Eric Debar and Simon Gachet, and representing Poland, Marcin Jedlinski and Karol Bash. United Kingdom's 4th, courtesy of Ian Loggy and Sam Neary. Switzerland's Dexter Muller and Yannick Mechler 5th, and there'll be a lot of support for Yevgen Solokovsky and Ivan Peklin, who take 6th for Ukraine. So the points scored across those two races will be added together to give us a grid for the GT Cup main race, and that will be the race from which the medals come later on in the day, and different drivers in cars for the GT Sprint tomorrow, which is another race really well worth looking forward to. But great action up and down the field in GT Cup, and there'll be more of the same in the main race later today.
Well, that was our final qualifying race for GT Cup, and the grid has now been decided. Darren, that just showed how much it means to them.
Yeah, it does. It was a great race to watch, really fun. Again, we went on yesterday's results. You could see that Germany had a great advantage in yesterday's race, but you knew after the pit stop that France really closed in, and it was like, okay, what's going to happen today? They're on the front row of the grid, and France looked strong, and it was only in that last sort of sector of the